Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. Hope you had a great weekend, and it's great to have you back, as it were, because we were a talk shop and we always have something to say. Now, we're going to talk about power today, power supply, and I just hope you have that, because that's the only way you can be seeing me. And even if your power is on a generator, which a lot of us know about, it's not public power supply, still, thank God that we're here. Because we're fortunate to help us understand the challenges of power supply in Nigeria, and we have with us UG Mohammed. UG Mohammed is MD, CEO of Transmission Company of Nigeria, and he's also the executive chairman, West African Power Pool Board, and we'll talk about that. And in case for your curiosity, let me just sort it out. Dr. Usman Gur Mohammed is the full and proper name, but he never uses the doctor. And then Usman Gur is UG. Everybody in the sector knows him as UG Mohammed. There's only one UG Mohammed. So UG Mohammed, thank you very much for coming on our show.
Thank you, Yori Salary. Thank you very much. Yes. It's good to be, a pleasure to be here.
It is indeed our pleasure, because I imagine that we'll find out quite a bit. Now, first of all, maybe we should start from the beginning. Quickly try to understand what exactly is the Transmission Company of Nigeria. Is it one company? Is it a bunch of companies? We know that it is a subsidiary of PHCN, but please tell us, what is TCN as a corporate entity?
Thank you very much. I think it's good to educate Nigerians of how the Transmission Company of Nigeria came up. You know, we usually used to have the vertically integrated utility called NEPA, which the name was changed as part of the reform to PHCN, Power Holding Company of Nigeria. Now, Power Holding Company, which was PHCN, was unbundled into 18 successor companies. Now, before the privatization, you know, we have three divisions of the former PHCN. You have the distribution, you have generation, and then you have transmission. Now, distribution arm of the vertically integrated utility was the one handling the retail of the business, while generation is the one that generates electricity, while transmission transmits the electricity from the point of generation to the point of distribution. So that is how it was. So now, as part of the reform, out of the 18 successor company, the 17 were sold. That is, 6 generation companies were sold to private sector, while the 11 distribution companies were also privatized. So the only one that was retained by government is transmission. Now, you said you want me to explain what is a transmission. Transmission is actually 2 companies in one. You have the transmission service provider, which is in charge of the asset. In terms of asset, the transmission service provider owns between 80 and 90% of the total asset of transmission. They are the owner of all the transmission service provider is the owner of all the asset, that is the transmission line and the substations, while the independent system operator, which is the operations sector, is the one that is in charge of operating the grid. So they are in charge of the National Control Center and also in supplementary control centers across the region. So they are the one that dispatch the generators and control the movement of the electricity. So even the independent service provider, for example, if they want to maintain a transmission line, they have to get a permit from the independent system operator. The same thing, any generator that want to maintain their network or want to connect to the network, they have to get a connection agreement with transmission. So that's how it is. Thank you.
And these 2 entities that you spoke about are actually under TCN?
All of them are under TCN. The transmission service provider is headed by Executive Director, Engineer Deumi, and the independent system operator is headed by Engineer MJ Lawal. Under the independent system operator, you have also the market operator. The market operator is a subset of independent system operator. So they're all part of transmission, and they all report to me.
Explain the other part of your designation as Executive Chairman, West Africa Power Pool Board. A power pool. We know, most Nigerians know that, yeah, Nigeria actually is the supplier of some countries in West Africa of their electricity. But the Power Pool Board, could you explain that, please?
Yeah, power pool, just like we have trade in goods across West Africa and across regions. It's actually not only WAP, West Africa, that has a power pool. East African power pool exists. Then you have also Southern African power pool, and also you have Central African power pool. Even in Europe, you have this kind of pool. There's European power pool, which enables sale of electricity from France to UK, and vice versa. So this is a way of trying to allow cross-border sale of electricity, so that electricity can be traded just like a commodity. And the intention is to actually bring down the cost of electricity. If you go to countries like Liberia and Sierra Leone, you see that they are generating electricity very expensive, sometimes at the rate of 21 cents per kilowatt hour. Don't forget that even the Azura that we say is expensive in Nigeria, the price is 10.9 cents per kilowatt hour. So you see, if we have a power pool, it means that electricity can move from places like Nigeria that we have cheaper generation, conventional generation, to places that are very expensive like Sierra Leone. And that is business. So the Nigerian companies can make money, generate employment, and at the same time, those people have cheaper electricity, cheaper than what they can generate by themselves. So that is the objective of the West African Power Pool, which is an agency of ECOWAS, actually. It's an agency of ECOWAS, but WAP is the only agency that is not depending on ECOWAS for its own operation. It is the utilities, we are the one that are financing the WAP. Now, most utilities in West Africa are part of WAP. But our own in Nigeria, because of the liberalization that we did, some of the utilities are not members of WAP. But as of today, TCN is actually chairing the board of the WAP, and the headquarters of WAP is in Cotonou. And we have Mainstream Energy, which is owners of Kainji and Jebba. They are also members of WAP. We have also Sahara. We also have Faras and North-South, and also Pacific Energy. All of them are members of WAP Assembly. And we're going to have the General Assembly this year in Nigeria between the 4th and the 8th of November.
Thank you. TCN reports an increased capacity of 8,100 megawatts. Could you air this a bit, please? Number one, put that in context. Whereas it is an increased capacity, could you also contrast that with the needed capacity for Nigerians to just be quiet and just enjoy it? In other words, like Niger Republic, which I believe we supply, and Benin Republic, anyone else?
Benin, Togo.
And Togo. We are supplying them, so they depend on us, and we often hear that it hardly blinks over there. Of course, naturally, we are envious, but you explained that it's not charity, it's business. Could you explain, one, the increased capacity to 8,100 megawatts that you report, and contrast this with how much is actually needed in an ideal case scenario?
Thank you very much. You remember I told you about the evolution of transmission. Part of what was also agreed, part of the reform, is that transmission will be run like a private sector. So transmission was actually handed over to a management contractor called Manitoba Hydro, who managed the company for a period of 4 years. After the 4 years, government felt that the company did not do well under those management contractors, and I was asked to come actually for 1 year to come and put a management structure that works. I came from the African Development Bank, and actually I'm on special leave. Up to now, I'm still a staff of the African Development Bank.
Okay.
Now, the objective was for us to see how we put a structure, because the organizational structure of TCN was disorganized completely by Manitoba Hydro. And for the 4 years that they were here, no single audit of TCN was carried out, and there was no single investment. So at that time, when we came in February 2017, transmission was the lowest in the power value chain in terms of capacity. The capacity of transmission that time was only 5,000. Now, when we came in, we quickly did some things that has never happened before. For example, we did a 20-year least cost transmission expansion plan. This was done by a company called Messrs. Fichtner of Germany. They did the study, they looked at the requirement of the distribution company, requirement of point load customers, and came up with the needed capacity at the various places of Nigeria. So if you look at all the expansion we are doing is based on that study. Now, when they came up with that report, based on that report, that is a 20-year least cost transmission expansion plan, we came up with what we call transmission rehabilitation and expansion program. Now, the transmission rehabilitation and expansion program is a 4-year out of the 20-year least cost transmission expansion plan. And the objective is to rehabilitate, stabilize, provide necessary redundancy consistent with N-1, and expand the transmission.
Not that I know what N-1 is.
I will explain. I will explain. And expand the capacity of transmission to at least 20,000 megawatt by 2022. That is the objective. Now, you ask what is N-1. N-1 is about the redundancy. The minimum international standard in terms of redundancy of transmission is N-1. N-1 means that if there's a need for a 60 MVA in a place, you put 60 times 2. Okay. That is the minimum. Some countries have actually N-2, but this is the minimum we are putting across Nigeria. Now, if you are building a line to be consistent with N-1, it means the line have to be looped. Also, if you are taking supply from a generator, the generator have to be looped. The generator should not just be linked only on one line. You have to have a point of entry and point of exit. That is N-1. So that is the objective of that program. And I can tell you that when we established that program, we also come up with 4-point strategy. The 4-point strategy include 1, frequency control. Now, before now, all our effort at expanding the grid were aimed at expanding the generation. Okay. Nobody look at the quality of power. Okay. But this time around, we look at also quality of power. And I can clearly tell you, we achieve a frequency control of 49.80 and 50.20 Hz. You know, electricity is something that you have to balance the demand and the supply. Frequency control is about the art of managing the demand and supply. The demand are what the discos can take. The supply are what the generators can generate. At any point in time, they have to balance. So even if you have a capacity of 10,000 megawatts, if the distribution company can only pick 3,000, it's only 3,000 you can generate. You can't generate 10,000. That is how it is. And that is how you can look at, even in your house, you can go and test it. Yes. If you have a generator that has a capacity of 20,000 megawatt, and the load inside the house is only 5 megawatt, if you own the generator, it will only generate 5 megawatt. It can't generate 20 megawatt. That's how it is. So frequency, in terms of frequency control, we achieve 49.5, 49.80 and 50.20 from December 23rd to May 5, 2018 to May 5, 2019. This is the best that this country has ever recorded. In fact, we are at the same level with the frequency control of Ghana. But from the 6th of May to date, we are struggling with 30% of that. Why? Because we are finding it difficult to balance the demand and supply because the weak distribution network.
Because as I was hearing you explaining about balance and
weak distribution network.
So
from May 6 to date, because it's raining, distribution network are very weak. Anytime it rains, they drop load like anything. So because of that, the issue of balancing the supply and demand becomes not only managing the generators to drop supply, but also the discos that are dropping load are unexpected, and that is the biggest problem. So this is what we have achieved, and that explains the reason why we are saying the discos should be capitalized. We can talk about that later, but that is part of the reason. Now, we have also advertised for spinning reserve. I can tell you, spinning reserve. Now, if you look at our daily broadcast now, spinning reserve, we only have, you see that is 0. With the average generation of 4,000 megawatt, the spinning reserve is supposed to be at least 10%, which is 400. As of now, we have 0 spinning reserve. And what is spinning reserve? Spinning reserve means that having generators online so that if there's any instability caused by a transmission line or a generator that are connected to the grid goes out, this spinning reserve is supposed to come up to fill in the gap so that there will be no instability. Now, I can also tell you that for the first time, we did a competitive procurement of spinning reserve, which we forwarded to NAC. We were able to procure only 260 because the spinning reserve it's not every generator that can provide it, because it has to be a generator that can come at a speed of seconds.
Okay.
Because if it takes a long time, it cannot be useful. So we have got 260. We have forwarded to NAC since December. They are looking for where to get the finance to finance the spinning reserve. Once that is sorted out, we will deploy it. And we believe that once we deploy it, very soon, when we advertise again, and they will get other generators to provide it, because it becomes a service that is being paid for. Now, the next thing we need to have as part of this our strategy is the functional SCADA. And that what informed the reason why we canceled the fiber optic contract between TCN and two companies, Alheri and Festeri. Because communication backbone was one of the big issues that made us not to succeed in SCADA. And for information, 3 times we attempted to have a functional SCADA in Nigeria, and 3 times we failed.
Thank you. Let me just understand SCADA. What does SCADA mean? I'm able to grapple with fiber optic network. I understand that has to do with transmission, but with communication, but you've added in SCADA. SCADA is an acronym for what?
Now, SCADA is supervisory control and data acquisition.
Thank you.
Now, this supervisory control and data acquisition is actually the control that is supposed to monitor all the organizations that are connected to the grid. Is what we call smart grid. Is the one that will give us what we call smart grid. So from National Control Center in Oshogbo, you can be able to see every part of Nigeria, and you can actually take out any part of the network that has some problem from the National Control Center.
Isolated.
That is what. So it's what we call a register of event. So if a generator is creating problem, because for example, I said that you need a spinning reserve to take care of maybe a generator that can go out unannounced. Now, is a generator supposed to go out unannounced? No. So if a generator goes out without a planned outage, that generator has violated the grid code. But if it goes out, something has to say that at this time it goes out, and this is what it did, so that you can sanction that generator accordingly, according to the grid code, because you penalize them. But if there's no SCADA, there's no way you can penalize them. So attempts to have SCADA in the past have failed. This time around, we have to succeed. And everything that we are doing to make it succeed, we have done, including the fact that we have completed the scoping. We have organized international conference on SCADA here in Abuja, because we discovered that in the past where we failed, 3 times we failed, 3 times is the same contractor. So we said that maybe we have been making mistakes in the past. Maybe we have been doing our scoping in such a way that only one contractor can win. So part of what we did at that conference is to bring all the original equipment manufacturers all over the world that manufacture SCADA to come and look at the scoping, so that they can look at it and see whether it's restricted to that particular company that is winning. We also brought Power Grid of India and another grid in Tarna of Italy and Gridco of Ghana. We analyzed, and actually that conference actually confirmed that what we did was the right thing, cancel the fiber optic concession agreement. We can talk about it later, okay, but this is one thing.
Yeah.
Now,
I wanted you to put in context 8,100 you've
Yeah, that's where I'm going now.
In context, how much do we need?
Now, I want to come there now. See, I've said about 3 things about that, our strategy. The last but not the least is the critical investment in line and substation. So it's actually the capacity of the grid that you're talking about.
Yes.
Now, the critical investment in substation and lines and substation, we took a decision to expand the grid. But let me also tell you, electricity is not just about the quantity that you need. You have to operate with redundancy if you want to have stability. And that's why, if you look at, according to power economics, if the generation capacity is 8,000, or you want to dispatch 8,000, transmission capacity is supposed to be twice. And distribution capacity is supposed to be 4 times of that of the generation, if you want to have stability. Meaning, if you want to dispatch 8,000 megawatt, you should have transmission capacity of 8,000 times 2, and the distribution is supposed to be twice of that of transmission. That's the only way you can have stability. So if you look at the studies that were carried out, especially the load demand study that was done by Tractable several years ago, clearly it indicated at this time we should have at least a minimum consumption of about 10,000 megawatt. But what we are doing in TCN is not to expand the grid by up to 10,000. We are working to expand the grid to 20,000 megawatts, or even more, because of the redundancy. Because of the redundancy I told you. Now, what we have done when we came in 2017 actually is that in terms of critical investment in lines and substation, we discovered that about 800 containers were stranded in the port. We have to come up with a strategy to remove some of those containers, and I can clearly tell you we have recovered 775 containers out of 800 containers that were stranded. And some of those containers have been there for over 10 years.
What do the containers contain?
They contain power equipment, and that have been awarded in the past. And
for almost 10 years?
Some of them have been there for over 10 years. Some of them have been
Will the
auctioned.
equipment not be obsolete?
Of course, there are some sensitive equipment, few of them that can have problems, but largely most of the equipment are still good. You know, these are equipments that are usually hard equipment. But if you are talking about relays, there are some few things that can spoil, but most of them are largely still
good.
And
for some reason,
and we are deploying them.
We were not able to take that equipment that had been ordered, that arrived in the port, something in the region of 100 containers, but and right up until when you came, and now. How has that been? You've achieved success. How did you achieve the success in getting it? And have you found out what is still useful after all these years?
All of them, largely all of them are good. And we have been using our staff to deploy some of those equipment across the region. In fact, I can tell you in the last 2.5 years, we have installed more than 65 power transformers across the country. This has never happened in the history of Nigeria. And largely we use our in-house capacity staff to do it. Okay. We empower TCN engineers and we tell them to go and install those equipment. And most of the time they are doing it at the rate of about 10% of what we used to pay contractors. And
about sometimes 10% of what contractors used to be paid?
Yes, and also at the rate of about 10% of the time that it takes. What we did was to empower these engineers and to tell them that they can do it. If you look at here in Lagos now, we have done such kind of work all over the place. If you look at Jigbo, we have put 40 MVA. In Ajah, we have put 60 MVA. And several, even the Elisha substation that was built at the island in Lagos was built by TCN engineers. In fact, the man that led the building of the substation, when we did the commissioning together with the former Minister of Power, Mr. Babatunde Fashola, right there at the commissioning, I recommended his promotion to become the general manager of Lagos because of the exceptionally performance that he did.
And this was a guy inside.
Our cost estimate, you know, when you want to do procurement, you have to come up with a cost estimate. For contracting was about 1 billion. That's what the engineers gave me as the cost estimate.
Dollars or naira?
Naira.
Okay.
Now, we gave this guy, and he completed the job at 150 million, including the fence, everything.
From a budget of 1 billion naira,
yes.
he finished execution
yes,
150 million.
Yeah, Debola finished at 150 million naira, and immediately we promoted him. He's the regional general manager of Lagos now.
And before, they were foreign workers?
Yes, yes. A lot of time, you know, Nigerians, most of the time, we don't appreciate ourselves. If you look at Manitoba Hydro, actually, Manitoba Hydro was paid officially $32 million for managing TCN, and they mismanaged the place. And look at me, how much is my salary? You understand? And we have changed the whole game. You understand what I'm saying? So we didn't just fold our arm. We decided as a Nigerians to change the game. Because you see, transmission is the backbone of the power sector. And as at that time, everybody can explain its incapacity with the transmission. So we have to do something to ensure that we bring up our transmission. And that's why we empower TCN engineers to take up all the transformers that are sitting and those that we are clearing from the port for them to install. And that's how we commission power transformers across the country. If you look at several commissioning we have done, it's as a result of that. In fact, we took a decision to take over some contracts that are not performing. Some of those contracts, in fact, some of them, the owners of those contracts are willing to work with us because they continue to keep this contract through variation. Contract that's supposed to be ended maybe in 2 years, end up staying for 10 years. The contract is not completed because they have some proxy, even inside TCN, they have some people who are in National Assembly that are helping them with the appropriation every year in their own the contract. So what we decided is that such contracts, we classify them into two. There are some that the owners of those contractors are not aggressive. So those ones we enter, we complete them, and we pay them, including the job we did ourselves. We pay them. At least we have closed the chapter. That's how we completed Kukwaba in Abuja and several other places. Now, there are some that the owners, they will not allow us to take over because it's a farm, so they want the farm to continue. Those ones we forcibly take over. For example, like Damaturu
in the greater public interest.
Damaturu, yes. Damaturu in Yobe State. The contract was awarded in 2006 at a contract price of $10.5 million and 823 million naira. That is the local portion. 406 million naira, the local portion. The contractor has collected the $10.5 million 100%. And collected, out of the 406, only the 5% retention, all the money she has collected. And in addition, has collected $2.2 million in variation. When we came in, we told the contractor, can you complete the job? The contractor said, we have to pay her 823 million naira plus $4.4 million. If not, she will not complete the job. We took over. This woman even brought army to chase our people out. Eventually, we have to use government might to stay the cost. But I can clearly tell you, we completed the job with 132 million naira.
132 million naira?
Yes,
and
complete, everything
you
finished.
just finished telling me that whatever, in addition to the naira content, you also wanted $4-point-something million.
Yes.
Now you've explained that it's power supply is like a chain. Now, I want to talk about discos. Do you believe or do you think that the distribution companies are undercapitalized? I ask this because it would appear that you have advocated their recapitalization in the past.
Now, even transmission was undercapitalized before now. That is the reason why we came up with those strategies to install equipment that are stranded, that have not been installed. We have also not stopped there. We have completed a project, partially completed a project that was financed by the World Bank, which is about $300 million. Part of them have not been completed. Now we are working to complete it, but we have completed almost about 50% of that project. And then we also have raised significant amount of money from multilateral donors. So even all those ones that I'm telling you we did, is not enough. We are putting N-1 across the country. We have raised $1.661 billion so far now, which are at various stages of procurement now, which means we are expanding the grid. Because government simply can't pay for this. Yes, so TCN is actually being capitalized by government through the intervention we are doing. But all these things that we are doing, including what we are doing through the donors, but let me take time to explain to you what we are getting from the donors. From the donors, we have $486 million that is coming from the World Bank. That money is going to look at only brownfield projects, existing lines and substation. If you take Lagos, for example,
did you say brownfield?
Brownfield. Okay. Brownfield means existing substation. It's not new ones. Existing substations and line. This $486 million, if you take Lagos, for example, this project will take at Alagbon, that project will put 2 by 100 MVA at 132 and 1 by 300 MVA at 330. Meaning at 330, this project will put the existing capacity by 100%. At 132, the project will put 80% capacity. This project will take all the GI substations in Lagos except the Apapa, which is being supported through a grant, will rehabilitate them and upgrade them. And this project, if you look at even Maryland, not too far from here, this project will put 2 by 100, will remove the 2 by 30 MVA and put 2 by 100 MVA. We'll also put 1 by 100 MVA at Alausa and several other places, all over the country.
Forgive me, I got to interrupt you because I got to go on break. We sometimes describe our producers as dictators. I got to go on a break. We'll be right back and we'll continue with this. Stay with us, please. We'll be right back. UG Mohammed, CEO of TCN, in the studio. And the time will come when we'll open the lines, of course, so you can ask questions. Stay with us, please. Welcome back. We have UG Mohammed in the studio. He's MD and CEO Transmission Company of Nigeria and also Executive Chair of the West African Power Pool Board. And UG, you were explaining, you were building up to whether or not you thought that the discos are undercapitalized, since you have been heard to recommend recapitalization.
Yes. Thank you very much. You know, I was explaining to you that TCN was also undercapitalized. We have to take a decision to capitalize TCN, and we have to start with the study that I told you we carried out, the 20-year East Coast Transmission Expansion Plan, which was the first that we have ever done in Nigeria. Now, I told you about the World Bank project, which is 486 million. That project is looking at the entire network, meaning the project is putting N-1 across the country.
Okay.
And I've explained to you what is N-1.
You must have double the
it's
capacity.
looking at the existing line, existing line, and existing substation. I told you about Lagos. If you look at Ibadan, for example, that project is putting 2x150 at Ayede, and it's reconstructing the line from Ayede to Shagamu. If you look at Port Harcourt, that project is reconstructing the line, reconducting the line from Afam to Port Harcourt, and it's putting 1/100 MVA at Port Harcourt City and 1/100 MVA at Port Harcourt Town. If you look at Kanu, at Kumbotso, that project is putting 1/100 MVA at 330 and 1/100 MVA at 1/300 MVA at 330 and 1/100 MVA at 132. And it's putting 1/100 MVA at Dakata at Dam Agundi. It's also reconstructing the line, reconducting the line from Kumbotso to Dam Agundi, Kumbotso to Dakata, and Kumbotso to Hadeja. If you look at Benin now, this project will put 2x150 MVA at 330 and 2x60 MVA at 132 at Benin TS. As it's reconducting the line from Benin TS to Irua, Irua to Auchi, Auchi to Opela, Opela to Okeni, up to Ajakuta at 132. So if you look at Abuja, this project will take in the city center the 2x45 MVA at the city center and replace it with 2x100 MVA. So that's what that project is doing. As at now, that project is about 70% completed in terms of procurement. And that project is being implemented effectively. Now, if you look at the other project, all the other projects are sector specific. They are looking at specific regions of Nigeria. For example, we have the JICA project, which is $238 million. That project is looking at the transmission and transformation problem between Lagos and Ogun State.
Okay.
You know, that is the area that we have the highest concentration of industries in Nigeria. And we are looking at providing stable electricity to those industries. So that project is putting 4 number 330 kV substations between Lagos and Ogun. And it's putting the line also that will feed those substations. And those substations will be one at Ogijo, that is 330, behind Mountain on Fire at Aribajo, and also at New Abara, the place they also call Ajegule. The project will put also 132 kV substation at Badagry and also behind Regime between Lagos and Ibadan, and the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. That project has been designed. We have finished the design. We have finished the environmental impact assessment and come up with a resettlement action plan. We have determined what we are supposed to pay as compensation, and we have sent to government for payment. We are at the final stage of the appraisal, which we are waiting for JICA to come in October, so that we'll finish the final appraisal and then we can launch the procurement. Then another project that we have is what we call Northern Corridor, which is $330 million, which is building 3 transmission lines in the north. And those lines are Kaenji Brinikebi Sokoto, the line from Sokoto to Kauran Namoda to Katsina, and then from Katsina to Jogana, Katsina, Daura, Guiwa, Jogana, that is in Kano. And also it will take one of the single circuit line between Shiroro and Kaduna and then build it into a quad line. Now, between Katsina, Daura, Guiwa, we are going to have the solar IPP complex in Guiwa. And because of that, the European Union has given us a grant of 25 million euro, which means that out of this 330 million, there's a 25 million euro grant from European Union. It's the highest grant we have ever attracted in the power sector, which is a free money that's given us because of the solar IPP. That project is actually been approved by the board of the European Union and also French Development Agency, who are the financiers. And we have also, and the procurement, we are almost about 70% also of procurement. Now, there's another one, Abuja Willing Scheme.
Sorry, Eugene. The discourse.
Yeah, I will come.
Because is it?
Now, let me just come.
I'm fascinated by all of this. I'm fascinated.
There's Abuja Willing Scheme, which is 170 million. And then there's transmission, which is also financed by the AFD, French Development Agency. Then there is also the Nigeria Transmission Expansion Program, which is financed by the African Development Bank. Is also there. Is also, we have done the advertisement of procurement just recently. So all of them are moving. We have changed the procurement criteria. We have changed the procurement method in such a way that we will not have stranded containers in the port again.
Okay.
But all these things that we're doing, those that are connected to the grid, apart from the discourse, are no more than 20. So Nigerians will not feel anything unless we did something on the side of the discourse. Now, if you look at the number of interfaces we have with the discourse, we have 737 interfaces with the discourse across the nation.
Okay.
Now, out of these 737, that is the existing. I'm not talking of the new expansion that we're doing. The existing. And out of these 737 interfaces we have with the discourse, only 421, the discourse have injection substation. Meaning the remaining 316 they don't have complete injection substation. In fact, 177, there's no injection substation. Meaning customers from household are connected directly to the grid, which means that 415 faults can actually be moved from the 415 to our network. What does that mean? It means that our 33 kV breaker becomes the primary protection for 415 customers. What I want to tell you is that if you go to Europe, if you go to our network, you will see that a 33 kV breaker that can trip 10 times in a day. 10 times in a day. Okay. I can tell you, go to Europe or America, you will see a 33 kV breaker that has been installed for 10 years and it has not tripped or even once.
So what's the main problem? What's the main reason?
Because there's no protection on the side of discourse. So if you don't capitalize the discourse, even the investment in TCN is not sustainable. And some of those transformers that we are losing, we lost 2 in Benin, we lost 2 in Abuja, we lost 1 in Onitsha, and several other places. It's because of this kind of thing, because the fault from the side of the discourse come directly. We are the one protecting, and that is it makes us our investment unsustainable.
Talk to me. I beg your pardon. Talk to me a bit about the what is referred technically as grid load offtake, because I know that your PR department has been quite angry with ANED, Association of Nigerian Electricity Distributors, that they are misrepresenting the actual figures that are available to you too. Maybe you could start, if you will, with when we liberalized, how did we go about it? I mean, are we talking about recapitalization? In one case, I think you even recommended that, look, if need be, let some be liquidated. How did we go about it that so shortly after we're in this stage?
Thank you very much. You know, it's the right thing to liberalize the power sector because government cannot sustainably invest in the power sector, definitely. And I will also suggest several other sectors we actually need to have to liberalize. Because if you look at our GDP and its capacity to generate revenue, you know clearly there is what you call structural issues in Nigeria. Therefore, we need to involve private sector so that government can have relief in financing those areas. But the reality of the matter is that what we did in 2012, we implemented right thing wrongly. Because how we implemented right thing wrongly, first of all, if you look at, we didn't determine the aggregate technical and commercial losses before we put off those assets for sale. And we also assume a 25% losses. And after we sold those assets to ourselves, because no foreign company will have come in because we didn't determine the aggregate technical and commercial loss, no qualified company that knows how to run a disco will be interested, because that is where they are going to be benchmarked, their performance will be benchmarked. Now, we didn't attract good companies to buy those discos. So the reality of the matter is that we implemented right thing wrongly. And therefore, because when good companies did not come in, majority of those companies in the discourse, they could not attract long-term finance. Most of the finance came from Nigerian banks, which are short-term in nature and very expensive. And it's like using short-term funds to finance long-term investment. So there's a mismatch. And therefore, that's part of what we have, the liquidity crisis that we have all over the place. And that's why we are suggesting that...
And how are these discos peopled? I mean, since you said no serious foreign company is going to come into this kind of a situation, so the people that are running it, I mean, were they... because you said we did the right thing, perhaps wrongly.
Yes.
What kind of... are the personnel at
now,
least right?
If you look at the discos, it's not all of them that are entirely bad, but there are very many of them that are very weak. They don't have the capacity to do the right thing. And on the side of government also, there are certain things that government is supposed to do, which I believe that we have not done it. Now, what we are suggesting is that if TCN has been capitalized, if we are going to get the benefit and have reliable power supply, it's not just to do one side. For generation, for example, I can tell you as the grid administrator, generation is not our problem. If we want to have 5,000 of additional generation in the next 2 years, we can have it. If we have the off-taker, somebody to take the load. But I've clearly told you that electricity, you cannot, you can only generate what you can take. You cannot generate what you cannot take. Now, even with the grid capacity of 8,100, because we added 3,100 in less than 2 years, we did the last simulation in December. But even with that, the highest capacity that the distribution could be able to take was 5,375.
Okay.
And as I tell you, if you want to know whether what we are saying is not right or we are not telling the truth, you can do investigative journalism. Find out through the network how many distribution lines that the discos are building, how many injection substations are they building. You will discover that there's none. In the last 5 years, you can't see many that has been built.
But we hear from them that the fault is often with TCN not being able to supply the demand that they have.
Yeah, I've told you, I've not said that transmission has solved all its problems. But tell me why we have a problem, and I'll tell you when that problem will be solved. And we have been able to expand the grid by adding 3,100 in the last 2.5 years. But what I can tell you is that as you are asking me now, I've told you where we are working, where you can call the Disco Association or whoever to tell you what is the investment that they are putting. There's no investment in distribution network, and that is where we have the problem. We need to fix the distribution network. And for us to fix it, we need to recognize the fact that we did something wrong. Okay. And correcting that thing wrong will include capitalization of the discourse. And what we are saying is that government cannot sit on the fence again. You know, the intention before was that government should be a passive player in the power sector. That's why in the distribution board, you see that government has 40%, but it has only one member on the board, while the discourse have 60% and they have 6 members on the board. So what we are saying now is that government cannot sit on the fence again. So government should bring its own 40%. And the owners of the discourse should bring their own 60%. And it should be in a form that is consistent with this kind of investment, meaning it should be an investment that can require repayment in 20 years and should have a monitoring period of 5 years. Now, the thinking is that if you have this kind of investment, and you know we have done something. We have done a study to establish the investment requirement of the discourse, clearly with the number of injection substations, the number of feeders that they are supposed to build. And we have benchmarked our study against some other utilities like the North Delhi Power in India. We have even hired a consultant to verify the study that we have done, and our study is reliable. So we need $4.3 billion in investment in the distribution company for them to be able to fix their own protection now, and also be able to take the load, that the expansion that we are doing. The
$4.3 billion.
So what we are saying is that government should bring their own 40% of this $4.3 billion, and the owners of the discourse should bring the balance. And in addition to that, we have to have what they call...
Do you think they have the capacity to do what you've just said, that the owners of the discourse, as presently constituted, can come up with $6 billion? Where are they going to get it from?
Yeah, when you are talking about capitalization, actually, if you don't have the capital, you bring people who will take over part of your stake. Okay. That's how when we capitalize banks, we did the same thing. So some of those owners of the bank, you have 10, maybe 100%, you end up having maybe 20 or 15%. But you know, it's good for you to have 15% of something, then have 100% of nothing.
One moment, please. Somebody's been waiting on the line because we got into that period. Good morning, Mr. George. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, good morning, Uncle Yori.
Thank you very much.
Good morning to Mr. UG Mohammed.
Okay. Good morning, sir.
Uncle Yori, Please, I would like to ask this gentleman, Minister Fashola, when he was in charge of power, was always saying that what is generated, that we have generated, I think the last he said was about 8,000 megawatts, but that to transmit it is the problem. I want him to kindly explain to us in plain language, what is the constraint? Why is it that what is generated cannot be transmitted? Why is it a problem that looks unsolvable? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to acknowledge the fact that Mr. Raji Babashtunde Fashola is one of the people that brought me to Nigeria, actually. I used to work for African Development Bank, so he's the one that actually brought me as the Minister of Power. And I don't know the context under which he spoke, but he could not have said transmission is only the problem. As I've told you, transmission has its own constraint, and we are working to solve the problem. And we have largely solved most of them. In fact, what we are putting now, all the expansion that we are doing the expansion to take care of redundancy that is needed, and also look at new places like I told you between Ogun and Lagos, where we have expansion of industries, where we want to connect them directly to the grid so that we can give them adequate supply. But the reality of the matter is that, yes, as we are expanding the grid and we are solving the grid problem, also is the distribution network are not having investment. That is the problem why that we cannot distribute a lot. As the grid administrators, I want to tell you that we are actually not giving connection agreement to people who want to generate electricity. If we are giving, many people will generate electricity, additional electricity connected to the grid. But if people generate and we cannot distribute, it means that we are putting contingent liability on the country. We are going to take more of monies that are supposed to be used to build schools and healthcare to the power sector. And that means that we'll have more generation that are stranded. As we speak with you, we have stranded generation of between 2,000 and 2,500 anytime. So, and that 2,000 to 2,500 is being guaranteed by MBET. Okay. So that's why we are not encouraging additional generation, especially if we don't fix the distribution network.
Okay.
Now,
moment, please.
what I want to tell...
Okay, did you want to...
What I just
because
want
someone
to
else
add
is waiting on the line too.
Okay. What I want to just add to the gentleman who called is that if you check around, apart from what the state government are doing in extending distribution to, remote areas, hardly will you see investment coming from the side of the discourse. So we need to do certain things to make this work. And what are those things? If you look at the books of the discourse also, to be fair to them, there are certain part of their tariff that they cannot collect. So we need to reset the books of the discourse. As we speak with you, the discourse collectively are owing TCN 270 billion of uncollected money.
Naira.
Yes. So their books are impaired. They can't erase money because of the liquidity crisis. So we need to give them regulatory consistency. We have to give them post-reflective tariff and also monitor them to perform. Okay. That anyone that doesn't perform should be dealt with.
Okay, that's where you said, if need be, people can be dissolved if they can't do what needs to be done. But Yakub, apologies for keeping you waiting, but we had to find a convenient place. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Let me begin. Let me start from where the gentleman gets off. He made a statement last week that anybody that does not perform, we need to deal with them. As you are speaking to this morning, sir, on my own personal opinion, I don't think they have already performed. They are not performed at all. So I have breaking things that, Mr. Yoni, the last government before this APC government comes to place, they made a lot of mistakes. One of the mistakes they made is to privatize this power electricity of a thing. Even though they privatized it and then Nigerians welcomed the idea. But I realized that they sold all these Genco, Disco to people that lack ability, capacity to give us the light. Now, this morning the gentleman in the studio made us know that we can generate whatever we can. But to distribute this light and send it to Nigeria, it is a problem. Why is it difficult for Nigerian government to refund this license from these people and give it to people that have ability to transmit and giving us this light? Let me give you another example. If you are today, in your area, in my area, if your light have a problem, you will be the one bought the transformer, you will be the one bought the post, and then you did everything that you can on your own money. At the end of the day, This is a perfect company, and then they will be charging you and collecting money, and then at the end of the day, they will tell you, why don't you write them to come and give you transformer? And then if you do so, if you're on your phone, you will stay for like almost 1 year, more than that. Because they can give you transformer. So you have no any option. Rather than calling your colleagues in the environment, your landlord association and others, you people will gather money and buy the transformer, and then at the end of the day, the transformer is not belongs to a perfect company. Perfect company, what to say? We have a lot of people to do this country. The solution is this. The Nigerian government should report this license and give it to people that have the power to give us life. Somebody like Dangote have the power, or they don't have the power because they have the money, they have the resources. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Yakub.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, and I also understand your frustration. I understand your frustration, but to be honest, also, what do you call it? Reversing the privatization has its own cost. It's not for free. And it will also send a wrong signal to the international community about us, as if we are not private sector friendly. So we need to take that into account. But if you look at what we have done from June to date, it's clearly shown that discourse can be dealt with. You know, we enforced the market rule from June to date, and the owners of the discourse have been paying us maybe collectively about between about 40% of our revenue. From June to date, we are collecting our revenue 100% because we enforced the market rule. So in the same vein, the market rule can be enforced on the side of the other side to ensure that even the payment to the Gencos, we collect at least a reasonable part of that money.
Okay.
We can enforce it. And the market rule clearly is the section 74, subsection A and D, clearly indicated that anybody who refuses to perform, it can be petitioned and it can be liquidated actually.
Okay.
But what we need to have the business continuity regulation, which we think that NAC is working to establish the business continuity regulation. Because, you know, a disco is not like a shop. It's a monopoly. If a shop selling grocery is closed, you can go to the next shop. But in a disco, if you deal with any disco, it means that you have to have somebody to take over for it to work. But I can also tell you, it's not all the discos that are completely bad. Some of them, if they have cost-reflective tariff and will reset their book, we believe that they will do well.
Okay. Joshua in Irewole, good morning, sir. Thanks for holding on.
Good morning.
Thank you.
And I greet the doctor.
Okay.
I really want to commend him. He's somebody that will make one proud to be a Nigerian. This is really good. I appreciate you, sir. And this area of the discos, as he was talking, I knew the disco part is a weak link. Now, something has to be done. I think Nigeria government, he as a stakeholder and as a participant, they should look at what to do about the discos. A drastic action needs to be taken so that all this investment will not become a waste. Because as he is saying now, he's an individual working in the area that he can cover. Imagine the contracts awarded and how much he used to execute those contracts. The gap is humongous. Now, that corruption part has not been taken away from the discos. So, you see, these all efforts should be encompassing. I think the sector, the government, and all the stakeholders need to come together so that we can fix the discos. Thank you very much, sir.
Indeed.
Thank you, sir.
Much.
Thank you, sir. I think NAC is doing a lot of things. You know, they did the minimum remittance recently.
National Electricity Regulatory.
Yeah, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory, they did minimum remittance recently. And I know that they are working on the business continuity regulation, which is the only thing that's remaining. Once they put the business continuity regulation, anybody who doesn't perform, it can be dealt with under the business continuity regulation.
Wow.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I can't believe how time has flown. It always happens. Because I didn't even have time to go into, you're thinking of supplying Eco Atlantic City.
Yes.
This was part of one of the schemes of the immediate past Minister of Power, Babande Raji Fashola. The objective is 1,000 megawatts, but right now we're at somewhere around 200 megawatts that cannot be fully taken up.
We have this eligible customer regulation that was established by the former Minister of Power. Under the eligible customer regulation is to take anybody who can consume up to 2,000 megawatt that person, I mean 2 megawatt per month can be connected directly to the grid. Is to ensure that that stranded generation of 2,000 that we have hanging, we should find a way how we are going to sell it. And it's under that arrangement that we are working to supply Eco Atlantic. I was in Eco Atlantic on Friday. We have done the advert for the procurement of the line and the substation, and we have gone to see the place where we are putting the substation. Eco Atlantic owners have given us a letter with undertaking to hand over the land to us. So we connect Eco Atlantic, and I believe that when we connect Eco Atlantic, we are actually helping Nigeria, because some of those people that want to build houses around the sea in Dubai, they can come to Nigeria. This is a fantastic investment, which is better than even some of those places in Dubai. So it's a good thing. I think.
UG,
yes, sir.
we've completely run out of time.
Yes,
I mean, I can't even believe we've spent more than 10 minutes, and
Thank
there's
you,
so
sir.
much more to ask,
Yes,
and this
sir.
is all fascinating.
Thank you,
But I
sir.
want to thank you very much, UG Mohammed, MD and CEO of Transmission Company of Nigeria, and Executive Chairman of the West Africa Power Pool Board.
Yes,
I thank you very much for coming on our program
Thank you very
and
much,
you know,
sir.
explaining some
I really
of this to us.
appreciate you, and I will be happy to come next time to shed more light.
Oh, I'm delighted.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much
Yes,
for
sir.
coming.
Yes, sir.
And so that's our program, and thank you very much for being with us as well. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. We have a long way to go in the whole matter of power, you know, the power delivery, but at least you get a better sense of where we are at it now. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I'm Yori Fulani. Bye-bye for now.